Buckle up, excellence junkies, because this podcast is definitely for you. Welcome to Rocket Fuel. Do you wish that you could surround yourself with people that love to kick ass just like you? Well, come to my party, baby, and meet some of the brightest stars in the entrepreneurial galaxy, because it is my mission to give these entrepreneurs a platform to declare what they are on this planet to accomplish and to show you why they are rocket fuel. And we're live! Oh, guys, I am excited about today because this is the episode for you gorgeous women in science and technology, the nerdy gals like moi, right? Where we are going to learn from an expert how to excel and ascend as women of color in this beautiful STEM world. So today I get to introduce you to Dr. Natoshia Anderson, or Dr. Tasha.
Hey.
Because she is the official nerdy STEM queen. Love it, love it. Hey, so Natoshia, you know, the people listening to this episode and listening to the Rocket Fuel podcast, they're people that just love to excel in everything, right? Live life, business on level 11. But we find a lot of people listen because they love to hear like what other people are doing. So can you explain first, what is STEM for those of you that may not know?
So, really good question. A lot of people think it's just this an acronym for these four distinct careers: science, technology, engineering, and math. However, it is literally the combination and conglomeration of the four together that makes STEM STEM. So
Ooh.
Technology wouldn't necessarily be the same without engineering or math or a little bit of science. Science it includes, these days, it includes technology and math. Same with engineering. So they exist together, which is how it is in the natural world. So STEM is not necessarily these acronyms. It is their relationship with each other and how they interplay with each other. That's STEM.
Interesting. I didn't even know that. I had no idea. So it's not even women. I mean, I was in the pharmaceutical industry and I have a doctorate in pharmacy, whatever. So I consider myself someone who had a profession in STEM, right? And I wasn't even thinking of it because I was thinking of it as like, oh, what falls under science, technology, you know, engineering, math. And I'm like, well, actually what I did was a lot of the things together. So you explained.
You probably did all of them. And in some way, shape, or form, you probably were involved or had some kind of inner relationship with all of them. But we tend to sort of think of biology as biology. It's science. But there's so much technology and so much mathematics. And these days, even engineering involved in the life cycle of a biologist. So we can't, they're intertwined. There's no getting away from it.
Yeah. So what's interesting is, you know, you serve these women, and specifically women of color, that are STEM professionals, which is amazing because your mission is to really help them excel, right? Excel and become leaders in this field. So tell me a little bit more about your background and how you got to this point.
So I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. So I know I know of what I speak.
Yeah.
I'm coming at it from many different standpoints. Experience is one, education is another, things that I just know that work, right? So I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, was a mechanical engineer for 10 years. So I did the thing, right? I ascended. I literally started at the bottom, and now I'm here. But I also educated myself along the way. And I don't necessarily always mean that in a formal educational sense. I mean, okay, I experienced this thing. What did that mean? What things did I learn from it? How could I have done that better? What were the lessons learned from it? And then, of course, I do have the education to back it all up. So things, my experiences are stellar and they matter, and they have informed my work for, they will inform and have informed my work for the rest of my life. So it's good.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because inherently, as women in this space, I mean, or as people in this space first, right? I think you could utilize those analytics and mesh it with curiosity and really problem solve through not only like what you're tactically doing, but your experiences as a professional. What were some of the things that you experienced as you were kind of ascending as a mechanical engineer? What were some of the things that you started experiencing that you felt like, shit, I need to help other people with this. This is hard, right? So tell me
Yeah.
about those.
Well, a lot of my experiences are formed around being a woman, and then others are around being Black and a woman. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so even when I was in college, I was almost always the only woman in a class. And second to that was I was, there was other minorities, but I was the only woman, or I was both. So I had, the double whammy, as we used to say, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that experiences meant that you were picked last for group project because people didn't trust you, or she doesn't know what she's talking about, and she definitely doesn't know what she's talking about if she's minority. They underestimated your abilities. Your ideas were downplayed or rejected altogether. It was in the grand scheme of things, I had friends, of course, but it was kind of lonely going to class each day and having to confront that over and over and over and over again. And that translated into what it was like being in industry, being the mechanical engineer of record on projects, and then having the project lead totally dismiss your idea, really, not invite you to meetings, having the client. I had one client who thought I was the administrative assistant and threw his notebook at me and said, "Okay, she'll take notes." Didn't even look at me. Just assumed, that was the only reason that I could be in the room, was to take notes for all of the other people. And
Mm-hmm.
so those experiences, led me to say, this is for the birds. So, and I would, so when I left,
That's a nice way of saying it.
it's like when I left, it wasn't because I was like, oh, I hate this job or I'm not good at this job. It's like, no, I need more of me here so that this becomes normal and people stop doing this, right? You like, this is not how business should be done by anyone, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm in the space, you need to at least give me the blanket respect of knowing that I'm supposed to be in the room, right? So, and so in my mind, what made the most sense was there needs to be more of us here to make it normal.
Yes.
Normalize seeing my brown face, and whether that's male or female, so that that, hey, we got the chops, we got the skills, we can do the thing because we're here. So that's motivation.
I want to unpack so much of that before. I mean, I have, questions packed in as well, but I want to sit on this topic because this is really important for all of us, and for all of the listeners to really appreciate. So, for example, in the beginning, I had mentioned and empathized and say, yeah, women of color, and included myself because I'm a Latina, right? But it's a big difference because I have mentioned this many times on my private Facebook page and with my friends, the very different experience being able to pass as not a woman of color, right? So I want to acknowledge that in the sense that I could hide, right? I just had to not behave in a certain way so that people didn't recognize, like, whatever. Now I had the single whammy, like the woman. I couldn't hide my movies, right? I couldn't, especially I was like, I am well endowed, right? So couldn't hide that, and that was a whole other issue. It's like, I was born this way. I can't help it. So can't hide the woman part, but the woman of color part was a cultural thing for me that necessarily wasn't showing on my face. But I want to acknowledge what you're saying. Having that double whammy where I have had people still refer to me just being the woman, assuming that I was going to be the one taking the notes, or I was just the lower person on the scale, you know, on the rung of people that were there. But
Right.
then add the double whammy. I want people to be aware of that experience.
Yeah.
That's really important. I mean, you are clearly, you're advocating to have more of those women in the room, which is important. More of those women in the room, so it is normal, right? But it's normal for women in general to, especially in engineering, you're still a minority. If that's going to be a minority for a while, and we're trying to get more women in the
Yeah.
field, you know, to begin with. But this process, this journey of trying to normalize that is going to take a long time. So what we can do today is acknowledge that when we get in those situations, assume everybody deserves to be in the room, first of all, and
Right.
understand that, and stop making those prejudgments. I mean, it's just a declaration and ask to say that if you're listening to this, you know, we're going to go on to talk more about how you support these women and support more of these women to be in the room. But then there's also the skill set of navigating that experience while you are still the only one in the room.
Yeah. Yes, to all of that. I mean, I think you're so right when you say that this is a long-term goal, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is not something that we're going to wake up tomorrow and there will be, you know, the playing field will be level and equal. For women, first of all, in STEM and engineering in particular, because that's the one
Mm-hmm.
place, engineering and technology are the two places, engineering with the lowest rate of women than and all of them.
All
So
of them.
so there's quite a bit of work to do there. But then when you put the race or ethnicity in front of women, the numbers are even lower, and
Right.
they're almost, it's like dismal numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, and for me, it's never been a matter of skill, right? It's always been a matter of um, exposure and I always say sustained effort over time. So making sure that these women, these girls have great experiences that lead to that pop of interest, and then having more experiences over time that lead them to go into the careers, and then having experiences that help them grow their career while they're in it, instead
Right.
of saying, "I'm out."
Right. Right. And being able to feel empowered and powerful enough to say I deserve to be here, but also recognizing that by choosing to be there, they also have the ability to carry the flag and change the
That's
dynamics, right? And so what we're asking of women today in STEM and women of color is to recognize, wow, you're paving your own journey and you have your own struggles, but guess what? Every single thing that you do today is going to make it easier for somebody tomorrow, right?
Yep.
And that is, it could be perceived to be a huge burden or really powerful position. And for you allow women to feel the power of the glory of being in that position. And I love that. I love it.
Thank you. Well, here's the thing. So I think what you said is so powerful and so true. What I want women of color to know and to walk away, women in general, but women of color in specifically,
Mhm.
is that your story is your story. Your experiences, your, you know, the do's and the don'ts, the lessons learned, all of those things, they're yours. They're uniquely yours. And I don't want you to take on the any type of pressure or feel like this is a burden that you have to uplift and do all those things, because your experience is your experience and no one else is going to experience it just the way you did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's the beauty of it. But what I will implore you to do is to share as much of your experiences as you are willing, because it can and they do help others. And
Yes.
so that's the thing. Don't keep it to yourself, because what happens is like history gets buried, folks forget, or folks don't know. They're walking in your shadow. They're walking in the same path that you took, and there might be some little piece of your story that can be inspirational, that could be a step one for somebody else, or even a thing to not do for
Mm,
somebody else. And so I would just implore you to really tell your story, get it out there in the universe, so that other people, the people that are watching you, or the people who come to know you, because there are people who know your name and you don't even know they know your name.
mm-hmm.
Just tell your story and make sure that you are leaving those little nuggets to be followed, to be swallowed up, to be taken. And so that's the plea. And in the meanwhile, we're going to talk about some other things you can do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, so tell me your thoughts on this process of helping people be able to tell their story. So it it gets very frustrating when you're consistently experiencing either, on the higher level, injustice, or
Yeah.
being mistreated, or just always being treated a little different. And it's
Yeah.
every day, right? Sometimes it's not this like humongous thing where somebody was like slanderous and like said some
Right.
absurd thing like in the middle of a meet. I mean, and believe me, there have been things like that. We all know, right? But sometimes it's just those little things every day. It's like chipping away, chipping away. I think of even I think a lot about how I allowed and enabled a lot of Latina
Mm-hmm.
jokes, right? Because it was my way of feeling integrated, right? So it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I'm gonna laugh at the jokes because this is like the camaraderie or whatever. And I do reflect back on could I have done some of those things differently, because all those people were not intending to hurt me. I allowed there to be a differentiation that shouldn't have even been on the table. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? It just shouldn't have even been there. And then I think back at little things of like people kidding around and being like, oh, Wanda, or Dr. Wanda, right? And I'm thinking, you know what? If it was a guy, they wouldn't say, like, it just wouldn't even be a thing. Like, oh, let's play around. I forgot you're Dr. Wanda. And I'm like, so I would laugh because that's the stuff that we're used to navigating around, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I'm sharing this is because there may be listeners who lovingly say these things to their women colleagues, to their Latina, to their women of color
Yeah.
colleagues, right?
Yeah.
And we're not saying that you're saying it in a mean way. We're just saying, like, why is it even part of the thing? Like, let's get to, like, we want to come to work and do our thing and make an impact and be as fabulous as, maybe we use fabulous,
Everybody.
right.
Yeah. So two things here. And this is really good, and I'm really glad we're going here. One is let's establish that women in general have been taught to be accommodating, keep other people happy, sort of knock down, like let's just keep it moving, right? And for women of color, this has been ingrained in us from very young, right? We want to knock down the discomfort of other people,
Right.
whether that's our parents, whether that's Caucasian folks. We don't want to be the cause of the scene, right? Of the
Right.
accident, right? We
Yep.
don't want to know. That's not who we've been raised to be. And so what that does for us is when in those instances when they're telling, jokes, or again, they were doing the thing that I've had happen to me also, is like, oh, are you and
Right.
I, it took a little while for me to be like, yes, that I am. I'm Dr.
Yeah.
Natoshia Anderson, right? I earned every single letter in it, and
Uh-huh.
that's that on that, right?
Yeah.
And so, but we have been, it's kind of, that's the thing that we have to unlearn, and take what's due, and show up in spaces and in ways that empower us. So the minute we let someone tell a joke that sort of downplays who we are innately, so you're Latina, and I am African American, I'm Black, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so somebody was just like, oh, well, that's, but it's not you. I wasn't talking specifically to you, right? So it's up to us to say, hey, yo, that's not cool. I know you meant no harm, but it's not cool. So
Yeah.
we have to be in the business of letting other people know that that's no longer going to fly. And so
Yeah.
have them decide to adjust. And that, I think, is a reasonable expectation, especially if there are going to be more of us in spaces. That's gonna happen. It's gonna happen whether it's you who does it or somebody else who does it. So it's about empowering ourselves, but also letting other people know this. You tell people how to treat you, and there's a bottom line to that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, this is going to go right into that as well. So when we think about, how we decide to allow other people to treat us and interact with us. And what I want to clarify here for my male and female listeners, we're not talking about like revolution. We're gonna like take control of that meeting and let people know what we. It's not about that, because inherently, like you said, we don't want to mix it up. Don't even want to be the point of
No,
attention, right? So
no,
it's like there's always this like struggle of figuring, well, how do you gently say the thing without being like, oh, well, now you just made it a thing. It's like, well, by you saying it, you made it a thing, right?
right.
But then you take STEM professionals, which in that whole world, the emotional interaction is very different, right?
It is.
There's definitely more of a logic, even keel sort of way of communicating. So if you get riled up, it's even more drama, right? Because
Right.
people don't get riled up, period. It's not like you're working with a bunch of like, marketers and salespeople where we're like, whoa, 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 right? I mean, it's different. So in general, because you provided this really awesome resource for the amazing women of color that are listening, right, that are STEM professionals, it kind of starts with managing up, like managing, most importantly, your relationship
Absolutely.
with your boss, right? Because that is where your future lies, right? And of course, managing around we talked a lot about like the team interaction and what happens in a meeting or whatever. But when you're talking about succeeding and ascending within a profession, most importantly is making sure that you have that good relationship with your manager, with your boss, and that even though all of these other discomforts, like they're percolating. And this is my concern, is like when we let things percolate, then all of a sudden that's when the big like drama thing, right? And so you put together this amazing resource, 3 tips on how to manage up. They're just super powerful. And I know that you have a lot more to provide here, but I like that you kept this succinct, because part of the objective of these catchwords and these resources we ask our guests and experts to provide is we want them to be able to be actionable very, very quickly. And then you could get into it more if you want. But it's the things that you really need to know to get ahead as a STEM professional, to make sure that you own how you are communicated to and treated, and that you actually feel empowered and don't feel like you're just being kind of pushed through this process. So before we get into what this piece talks about, I invite the audience to please text RF for rocket fuel -power, POWER, I love it, to 41132 to receive instantly this guide, these 3 tips on how to manage up, specifically for STEM professionals and women of color, right? And you'll be able to access other resources for those women of color that are really seeking to excel as STEM professionals. That's if you're in the US, the number is 411321. The message is RF-POWER, power, right? And of course, we're going to ask for your email address. Now, if you are listening internationally, you get to get this resource too. You're just going to text to +1 909 741 1321. All of this will be in the show notes, but +1 909 741 1321. Don't wait to do it. The message is going to be RF-power. And don't forget to provide your email address, because voila, you will get it instantly. So tell me a little bit more about your rationale in picking this piece. Is picking it like one of the first things that people can start to do to make a change?
Oh, so thank you. And I love this. Mm-hmm. So the thing is that this is one area where I think women of color, STEM professionals, especially women who are in STEM, right? Let's just, we'll start there.
Yeah, it's like zip, zip, zip. Yep.
Right. So we do the funnel. So like start broad, get specific. But I really think that this is an area where we need to learn how to excel, how to manage up, how to manage our boss, right? So we have these experiences. He or she may have said something that was untoward. They may be overloading us with work. We haven't set boundaries. We don't, so there's all of these things that are clouding our work experience. And again, it's not the skill level. It's not the talent. It's not the technical, blah, blah, blah. It's the other stuff that has us leaving this industry, STEM in general, in droves, right?
Yeah.
So part of this is giving us or learning the skills that we need to master this portion of the business, right? So if you learn how to manage up, and you can navigate that space as long as keep your technical skills up, it's wide open for you. It is wide open for you while we work on the other stuff, right? Because there's still other work to be done. So that's why I put this together. I've just seen it so many times, have experienced it myself, have learned from my mentors, from those people who were watching that I didn't even know that they knew my name. They pull me off to the side and say, "Hey, let me give you a little bit of advice." And I'm like, "Oh, check mark, got this. I can do this," right?
Yes.
Those of us who don't or haven't navigated that space yet, these 3 tips are going to help you.
So I'm going to tell you, this is golden stuff, okay? Because I have firsthand experienced the frustration of feeling like, I don't understand, like, why are things working for them? Why is so-and-so getting a promotion, or he's being considered for this and that? And I'm not. And so This whole concept of managing up, by the way, this isn't like a sneaky, like, well, women have to figure it out, or women of color have to figure it out. First of all, managing up is a thing that leaders learn to do, right? I think it's a greater challenge, though, for women and for women of color, because of what you mentioned before, where we don't want to mix things. We don't want to create waves. Right. So inherently, it's difficult for us to communicate, because we feel like if we communicate it, then it winds up being like a thing, right? Like, oh, the Latin woman got like all fired up because she got all upset about this and that or whatever, right? So when I was reading this, I was just like, oh my gosh, I wish I had somebody tell me these things before, because I just felt like, you know what, people are against me. Like my inherent feeling was like, this clearly isn't for me. It's because I'm a woman. They're not listening to me, whatever. Right. So I think we need to be aware that these skills are skills to be had. And yes, our perspective maybe makes it a little bit more of a challenge. But once I became aware, huge. One boss that I had, I was so overwhelmed. And this was one of the things that you had mentioned. I was so overwhelmed. I was literally working 60, 70 hours a week. Right. And I had to tell him that I couldn't do all the things anymore. But I had gotten to the point I allowed it to happen for so long that when I communicated, I was angry. I I
Yeah.
I had tears in my eyes. I was just like, this can't be done. And then I had this like anger of like, why are you putting this on me? Like all of these things. And what I realized is he said, okay, well, tell me what you can do in 40 hours. I need you to prioritize those things and just make me aware of those things that you can't do because they don't fit on the list. And I was like, huh? I was like, what do you mean? Because I was like trying to do all the things and I felt like he was like, well, the thing is, I don't know how fast it takes for you to
Right.
do this or how long it takes for you to do this. So what you need to do is manage me and let me know, like, okay, well, you just added something on my list. What should fall off the list, right? And I was like, like brain blown, like, oh my gosh, I could do this. So I love that you talk about like just how do you communicate all of these things effectively, because what you specifically mentioned here is that the leader appreciates that. Like my boss appreciated that I mentioned these things, and then he said, all right, well, let's deal with the situation. And it allowed him to feel like he was a better boss instead of me like crying.
Right. So for me, it's all about the creation of boundaries, right? So we all have them. And it's a matter of us just saying, listen, this is the line for me. I have to be at, I have to leave by 5. um, I can only give you X, Y, Z, whatever the boundary is. It's up to you to tell, again, going back to you tell people how to treat you.
Yeah.
So this is that in a work sense. So I've been working 60 hours for the past couple of weeks. I need to take flex time, or I can't continue down that road before it gets to a point where you're burnt out, you're sad, you're angry, you're snapping at folks. People are like, she's the angry Black woman,
Right.
all of those things. And without realizing that there's been a pile on of things, right? Some of it of your own making, because
Yes.
you felt like you didn't have a voice in your own career pathway, or what you did. And so if you establish the key is, if you can, to establish these boundaries at the very beginning, right? So
Mhm.
so your boss already knows these are the things, these are the places, right? And if and if of course some boundaries appear because life happens and things change. So then it's up to you to say, hey, that was acceptable before, but now my situation is different. Now here's the boundary, and
Yeah.
have him or her, whatever the response is going to be. But it's up to you to do that work, because
Yeah.
they don't know. They feel like you can do the thing. So they'll keep giving you, and they'll keep doing it at the last minute. They'll keep calling you on Saturday, that unless you say, hey, this is not cool.
Yeah. Yeah. What I also want to throw out there is that it's different in the sense that males establish these boundaries in a very matter of fact way. It's
Right.
not like I need to hold on to my boundary. It's just like, oh yeah, by
Right.
the way, I leave because I coach my kids things, so I have to leave by 5 and I do it, and it's just is what it is. So
Right.
this is my personal little like tidbit to consider, because I feel like I had to reflect upon it, that because it's difficult for me as a woman to establish these boundaries, I already have this like fighter like vibe to me when I'm communicating my boundaries. Like, look, I can't work after 5. Like, I need to do these things, right? And it's like, well, it's all right. Like, but like I may start off with like fight, like just this energy of like,
Yeah.
I need to put my foot down when they weren't even trying to go out of the bound as well, right? So I think it's interesting to just be aware of like what may be driving, because if we're anxious about communicating, right, we might actually have a different vibe of how we communicate it, but all these things are not unique to women in having to communicate, right?
No,
It's just
they're not.
how we communicate it and the struggle that we have in bring it up.
And I would actually really, I would say that women, unfortunately, still don't even think of them, right, as options.
Oh, right.
As
Yeah.
options. The thought of managing up is not an option. And for a lot of women, this is my boss. I'm gonna do things that he or she says. This is the way we are rule keepers, right? We keep the rules. We don't rock the boat. We don't make waves, as we said. So he or she is the boss. This is what we do. And so the thought that we would have to manage another person is not something that we do, right? It's
Yes.
not a thought. So it has to be now, or at least I really feel like it's a really good thing to have this thought, like, oh, okay, she's somebody I'm going to have to manage, right? Or
Yeah.
this situation it has presented itself where I'm going to have to, again, tell him how to treat me. And
Yeah.
that's how this is going to play itself out. And
Yeah.
it's up to us to recognize it instead of doing the thing we always do, which is sort of turn ourselves into pretzel pieces to be accommodating.
Yeah, yeah. And I would actually say that every single manager needs to be managed. It isn't, don't wait for the problem to arise, because it's the activity isn't it starts with a reflection of what you want to get out of the experience, right? And you mentioned this in this piece. I mean, guys, this resource is great. If you my mission is to say, if you are the one woman, hopefully there's more, but even if there's one of you ladies out there, women of color, a STEM professional, you are looking to ascend, you are looking to learn how to play this game, how to support other women in successfully playing the game, right? You need to request this resource. There's no question about it. It's fantastically written. It's just like the tip of the iceberg, right? But it just shows you how Dr. Toshia really supports the women in her community, her clients. So please text RF-POWER to 411321 right now. I need you to, I'll pause. Pull out that phone, 411321. The message is RF-POWER, and you'll receive these 3 tips on how to manage up. I keep on like waving this PDF in front of people for those of you watching on video. Right. And remember, if you are international, we love you too. +1 909 741 1321 is the number. The message is RF-POWER. We could go on and on, Dr. Toshia. I know it. We're already like way past time. I'm going to get yelled at. But what is your final message to these wonderful women in the audience that you could support?
Okay, so the bottom line for this is that to be true to yourself, but to remember that you tell people how to treat you. You have the power. You need to use it.
Yes, absolutely. So tell us quickly where else. Obviously, people can text RF-POWER to get your wonderful piece, but where else can they find you?
Oh, okay. So I'm all over social media. It's on Twitter, it's Dr. Toshia 11. Instagram, it's the Nerdy STEM Queen.
I love it.
LinkedIn, you can find me at Dr. Toshia. I have a website. It's drtoshia.com. Find all of the lovely things that I'm doing and have done in any of those places. If you want to hit me up, please do. I would love to get your feedback on the document. And don't forget to get your free copy.
Yeah, and the thing is, what I want to thank you as well, I didn't mention this, is when people text, they actually have the opportunity to access your calendar, which is really fantastic. And just very giving of you to be able to allow people just to get in on your calendar and talk about what their current struggles are, and maybe we could figure out how you could support them along their journey. So guys, you need to text RF-power, and I want to clarify, it's Dr. Toshia, Toshia. All right, thank you so much, and guys, I hope you guys have a rockin' day. Bye now.
Bye.